Number two, to receive from members declarations. January and on for June. Waiting, please. No? No declaration, please. Three, to no correspondence at this meeting and to take actions as appropriate.
And two items of correspondence, Chairman, both of which will be referred to the appropriate point on the agenda.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned and public comments or questions invited on agenda items. Are there any questions on agenda items? No? Okay, we'll move on. Number five, to discuss plan applications as notified by the Southern District Council. The first one is 5-1. 06-14-17, please, we're on the stroke, please.
Application for the erection of a conservatory at 3 Malting Field. Malting Field is New Road. Malting Field quite close to the junction here. There's the cottage nuisance corner here. A little closer, because I think one of the aspects that councillors might be interested in is if there's any danger of overlooking. Here's the house, here is the proposed conservatory. You'll see that the building lines are not contiguous, so there is, in fact, perhaps half or 2/3 of the conservatory which could be overlooking the site to the east. The application form is quite unambiguous and seeks to find permission to erect a white UPVC conservatory onto a brick-built base, leaving the existing external living room door and window in place to maintain the thermal break. And that will look like this. So here is the footprint as it is now. The proposal is to put a conservatory there. There's the door and the window which they're retaining. And it will look rather like a conservatory. I suggest it being this doorway here. And that's all the information I have to.
Thank you. Just noting the drawing there, Peter, there was a full white brick wall adjacent to the boundary.
Sorry, the drawing.
If you go back to there was an elevation.
That's very wrong. This one.
Yeah, I think it's just worth noting the full white brick wall.
Oh, this one here.
Got it there.
Yeah, check there. Yes, sorry, the dealing entirely, absolutely, yes, quite right, with any problem we're looking at.
Yeah, you mentioned the other
Yeah.
but I think it's really overtaken by that wall.
I think probably the possibility of overlooking, which has removed this from permitted development, and they're required to make an application.
Okay. Peter?
Thank you. So that wall is part of the property in question, isn't it? So
No, that wall that I refer to is actually the
yeah.
wall of the
Right. So
conservatory.
there is a problem.
There is no problem.
I can't see any other problem, can you? I would have thought not.
Personally, no.
Might be a problem to support that.
Yeah, support. Yeah, okay. Support on the side. Yeah. General support, please, all members. I'm trying to, Peter.
As fast as we build conservatories, we knock it down. This one is to demolish a UPVC conservatory in the rear of the existing 2-storey semi-detached dwelling and to build in its place a new 2-storey extension which will provide a new kitchen and a first floor bedroom. This is retrospective in the fact that it's almost built. But again, I have to advise councillors that that this is dealt with as though it isn't built. If there were a virgin site and you have any objections, those objections will stand. I put a line across here because that indicates roughly where the the line is the development of the front of Linden Croft. Here's Linden Croft, which is immediately overlooking the site. This has now got 3 houses on it, which changes the planning perspective somewhat, but not necessarily decisively in any regard. So here we have the driveway to this house here, and what they're proposing is that's the front of the house. There's the separate garage. I've highlighted anything that was very important. This is the conservatory which is to go, and obviously this will all be internal. On the upper floor, the line of the existing roof is to be extended over the proposed kitchen below, together with a new ensuite shower room. The new bedroom is to have glazed double doors and a Juliet balcony to allow for a view of the garden beyond. This has been carefully sited to avoid any overlooking. So here's the conservatory again going, if councils consider that to be a thing of beauty, they might object. The new front bay window and covered area at the front of the building has been removed. So this arrangement here is to go and replaced with a simple mullion style window, traditional type canopy over the entrance door. New windows have also been introduced to the south elevation to allow additional light into the living room. And the applicant says the extension has been designed to reflect the existing with a pitch and appearance to match the original finish as the main dwelling, externally rendered, facing with plinth, etc., as per the more recent part of the building. The new roofs all follow the line and pitch of the existing and the more recent part of the building and are finished using matching fan tiles. All the other railings with soffits, etc., are to match. Windows and doors are painted timber to match. That will produce, and what I've done here is I have managed somehow, if I could rotate it, to do side by side. So this is the ground floor. This one is as it is now with the conservatory and with the arrangement at the front. This is as proposed, and councils might like to see that the footprint is simply the extension of, so that return disappears, we extend that boundary wall there and square everything off. So the footprint is no larger, and in fact you could argue that it is slightly smaller at the front there. And upstairs is, again, if it's worked and it has, we can look at the upstairs, where obviously that has all gone. So the upstairs gains the benefit of that extra space there, in which they put bedrooms, etc., as they described. And I think that is, we need to have all of that, but we do have elevations. This is as it is now. So it looks now with that sticking out the back as per the photographs on the side, and the proposal is that it looks like that. So back becomes, and the front becomes, etc. That's it, Joe?
Could you just put the plot plan
Of the
ground floor? Ground floor. No, the actual plot plan, but where you can actually see the building and the land around it. Where you said this is obviously where the 3 houses have been put.
I'm sorry, yes, yeah, I'll just bounce that up a bit. They didn't provide us with a separate check there.
So it actually backs onto the railway, is it?
Yes, there's a railway line there, so the garden extends down to the railway. The D and A does say, if I'm looking, it used to be one house. The old manor house is an existing 2-story family, originally a single house that was subdivided in its history into 2 separate dwellings, which were then all different to the house. But it doesn't say how old it is. Sorry, it doesn't say how old it is.
We don't know. You must want it. No idea.
Been here a long while, been here longer than me.
I mean, certainly that there's a word policy really surrounding, so what those
You're saying
can
it is improvement,
But
yeah.
I would like to know from the council, make sure that obviously,
What evidence do you think that can be on?
just to make sure that they're actually keeping, being keeping with the I mean, if it's 50 years old, then obviously it's 100.
One thing at 1.5 years old, but I think to answer your question, I would say it's probably in keeping and it's probably an improvement. Like modern conservative, modern-ish conservative.
I'm intrigued to know what the Juliet opening is. Is it a smallish one?
Something to do with Romeo, isn't it?
Well, I can imagine where it came from, where the name came from. Well, I mean, and I'm also wondering what the border is, whether there's a wooden fence or a hedge between the two properties. And we're told that the overlooking issue is being addressed, but
And
that's
you know, that's a rock plan,
really fine, isn't it?
I don't think there is any looking problem, because it's straight down the existing garden, so.
There is just a hedge down that side from my memory.
Exactly.
Tall one.
Personally, I can't see any problem whatsoever. I can only see it's almost enhancing the existing building. Yeah, I want that.
Yeah, I want to see it.
Yeah, okay. Guys, support it. So, support people, Okay, so we now move on to 053.
We've done the easy ones.
Yes.
This is an application for outline planning commission for development of up to 120 residential units with all matters reserved except access on land to the east of Ashfield Road. Can I ask the detail? It's mentioned in the planning statement. I'll cover it then if I may. I'll take the point. So people might not know that. Ashfield Road is here. The Blackbourne is here. Slightly augmented from this plan because this plan's been around a long time. I was going to say. And this is the site around the White House farmhouse is there. This is the cartway through that takes you to White House Barns. That's the farmhouse there, so it's right around the farmhouse, and there's an interesting little adjunct down there, which again I will deal with later. The actual site itself, this is relevant because one of the issues is drainage, which we'll deal with, and I have exactly this plan with the drainage marked on it. At the moment, the drainage comes down here and shoots across this site. Which has somehow been overlooked by this applicant, but it is being dealt with, but you will come back to that map later on. The proposal is that we accept 120 houses, and there's an indicative plan. Now this indicative plan has been seen before. And I think as the applicant has also mentioned this, and I've also had correspondence about it today, I really want to cover that for the benefit of councillors who haven't been around as long as some. It goes back, my file goes back to July 1997, 20 years ago. There was a document presented, and if I were to, and it wasn't just at the back of an envelope, it was a substantial document which virtually includes all the plans which are now before you this evening. These are outline proposals, and if we can rotate it. land, here's Blackmore, 8 acres of land immediately contiguous to the north and east boundaries of Blackmore. And there is mention made, and we'll do that in a second, that this road that I said was important, which is still there, might very well serve to relieve the pressure on the existing access to Blackpool from the south, so that the suggestion was that we could virtually have a one-way system in and out of Blackpool and relieve the pressure on this road. That was in 1987. 1997. And in August of that year, the Eltham Parish Council wrote to the agent concerned and gave wholehearted support to the proposal that was there. We leap forward to 2002, a mere 11 years ago, and representations were made by the agent on behalf of the same applicant to Mid-Suffolk, responding to what was called the Issues Report, which was part of the redrafting of the local plan. In other words, they're saying, we're redesigning the whole district. Is there anything that you think we should know about? These applicants said, yes, we think that you should be aware that we are very happy to provide 10 acres of housing and various other concomitant benefits to the village. In April 2004, this offer was reinforced in the light of the deferral of the local plan process, which is part of one of the problems as to why we don't have a local plan and no longer have a 5-year land supply, but that's another issue altogether. So in 2004, it was still alive and it was still being actively promoted to the right authorities in the right way. If we leap forward to 2011, and there are intervening bits, but they're not as dramatic as these, we have another map, because it was then that the applicant decided that one of the things that the village would need, if they build their 120 houses, would be more education facilities. So they added to their offer an adjacent field here, and I haven't got the side of that because I didn't research it in time, an adjacent field here that would house a primary school, and there were noises also made about providing adjacent land for a doctor's surgery. Meanwhile, the 8 acres stuck onto the side of Blackbourne remained on offer. That was in 2011. In 2012, a presentation was made to the parish council which reinforced this iteration of the plans, and again the public were present at that, and it received wide support because it was seen to be addressing some of the shortcomings in the infrastructure that the village was very aware of. March 2014, the neighbourhood plan group asked these developers to come along and outline these proposals yet again in the light of what was emerging, and they did, and the neighbourhood plan thought, as the parish council had, that what was on the table here was offering a far better deal than some of the other suggestions that had been suggested might come forward and have since come forward. And in May of 2015, the county council called parish councillors, district councillor, Sir Anthony was there, and these developers together in Bury to talk about the school situation in Elmsall, the burgeoning pressures on the primary school, and how this particular proposal might help deal with them. The point that I'm rather long-windedly making is that this site has a history. The developer's aware of it, this council is aware of it, and so on, Mid-Suffolk aware of it. If we look at the design and access statement, and I will say again that councillors have all had a copy of, if I look at the planning statement, councillors have all had this for a week to look at, so although I can skate through it, they have all seen it in some detail. I skate through it and pick on various salient points. The first one being that White House Farm, which is surrounded by the site, is a Grade 2 listed building. And to come back to the point that Councillor Table was making, normally you take your cue as to whether the age of a building is a significant factor as to whether or not it's listed. That one is listed. And to come back to Councillor Friend's point, this application is submitted in outline with all matters reserved except for the meter access. What that means is that if this is passed, all it is a lump of land with an indication of a maximum of 120 houses, and the road is pinned down. The point of access is part of the decision that can't be changed. Everything else can be changed. And this council is very aware of that and is quite wary of it. But at this stage, this is all that's on the table. It goes on to say 3.2. The site plan shows that land to the east and southeast is also within the control of this client. Should there be a requirement, and can also be provided for a new primary school and or extension to the recreation area of Blackpool. The client is willing to discuss these matters throughout the consideration of this application. So it isn't part of the application, but they have made it clear that their original intentions hold true. And if council is interested in taking that discussion further, they are very happy to do so. They go on to deal with the doctor's surgery. It was initially anticipated that land for doctor's surgery, primary school, and the expansion of Blackpool would be included, as they thought, quite likely, that the imposition on those elements of the village's infrastructure would need that sort of help. But this proposal is just for 120 dwellings, the primary school, and extension. That was what they were talking about, because the doctor's surgery will be concluded that the provision for a new surgery in Eltham was not required, and this would not be supported by local GPs. That view is borne out by the findings of the neighbourhood plan group and feedback that we have had back here at this council, that the current political climate, as far as the NHS is concerned, would militate against the provision of satellite surgeries such as this one. What is clear is that if this council or anybody else thought that a piece of land might well be reserved in future in case the NHS changes its mind, that might very well be still on the table. As far as education goes, the applicant is aware of the concerns, and these councils are very well aware of the concerns. They asked me to publish those concerns in the newsletter, and the full figures were published, I think, last month or the month before, showing that by 2019, the school is full. We have had meetings with Suffolk County Council, who then say, well, the school is full, but we consider we could expand on that site up to a certain number. Or we could consider, which is why they spoke to these applicants in 2012, we could consider another school, and either split schools or a new school or whatever. But these applicants are very aware that the schools will be under pressure. The Education Authority has commissioned a feasibility study to confirm if and where the capacity is, and secondly, if they can expand, etc. And we know that that thinking could go either way. As a result of the finding of the study, these applicants have concluded that the development will not generate the requirement for a new school, and that's very obvious. But they are aware, we are aware, and you are aware that the cumulative effect of 830 houses as of Tuesday of this week, I think, 308 houses, the cumulative effect has got to require the school to be looked at seriously as part of our infrastructure. So they dealt with education. The site has been promoted for many years, as I've said, during previous local plan consultations, submitted again to the council in the context of the form of the local plan consultation. It's been promoted through the local plan, identified as achievable, available and potentially suitable in the SHLA, which is the strategic housing assessment that the district council does. It's chosen 8 sites around Eltham and said these are sites which people have said we would make them available, and with Suffolk District Council thinks that they could be developed. End of story. They're not saying they should be, they're saying they could be, and this is one of those. And there are, I think, no, actually there are 11. And I think towards the end there might even be more excitement, or there might not be. Nearly there. So this large document, as I say, councils have had this file for a week So they've been able to absorb this completely. They carried out operation capacity assessments on the highways network. Now, the reason I highlight this is that the last 3 times that this council has met to discuss any development on this scale, highways have come out as the ultimate sticking point. It is concluded that the quantum of vehicular trips generated by the development would be accommodated by the proposed access. So what they're saying is the access is okay. The assessment concludes that the impact on queuing at the level crossing will be minimal. And it says here on my notes, pause for laughter. The proposal does not generate the requirement for relief road. Now, once again, one is faced with the rock and the hard place of having to accept that on their own, any one of these big proposals does not generate the requirement for relief road or school or surgery. On their own, they don't. And the problem is that the planning way of thinking is that you deal with them one at a time. And until one is in place, you can't allow that it exists. So what they're saying is, strictly speaking, true. But we know different. The other issue that's been raised with me by a very well-informed resident is the flooding and drainage. It is not a high risk of flooding, but it is the case that surface water from as far north as Oak Lane does cross this site to exit the village. And it does seem as though that element of surface water was not dealt with in the original submission. I am assured that they are dealing with it, currently dealing with it, and obviously the professionals who will also have sight of this will make sure that it is dealt with. Councils might like to be aware that it is something that they should point out as having to be very specifically dealt with if this is to go any further. Because it points out rather nicely, it says the underlying ground conditions mean that the on-site disposal of surface water runoff by infiltration is considered likely due to the cohesive nature of the soil. That means it's pretty solid clay, so it's not going to get away anywhere else. So the surface water runoff foul water is dealt with by angry water and doesn't seem to be an issue raised by anybody. And that, I think, apart from the conclusion which are generally mother with an apple pie, and generally say that the applicant thinks it's a brilliant idea. The transport assessments that they've done are here if anybody wants to see them. They are very complex, very technical, very detailed, and I suggest that it would be lost on most of us on the screen at the moment. It's something you have to sit down and study, but they're there if anybody wants to see them. I've had 2 items of correspondence which refer, one of them from residents arrived today, and to councillors, unfortunately unable to attend, like to offer their support to the parish council in making the right decision on the recent planning application to get more development in Elmsall, inasmuch as this is all too much too quickly. The government is amending the town and white paper to prioritise new building on brownfield sites before agricultural land. So it would appear that every farmer landowner is putting in applications for building development. This is tantamount to nothing more than a massive land grab. Most residents, one would assume, are pleased to see the development of the bacon factory site, and I'm sure that the number of houses there will accommodate the needs of the village as it grows over the next couple of years. But the strain on the amenities if all these other developments take place would be devastating, not to mention the increase in the volume of traffic this places on our all too busy roads. The objections raised at the previous extraordinary meeting regarding Weatherly Road and Warren Lane are even more valid to these new applications. Thank you for taking the time and for your work as Parish Council on behalf of the village. And this from one of the principals of the applicants. There's a preamble, but then it says, number 1, our application is not the result of travelling developers. And I think the point that is made here is that it's not a hit and run. It is people who have worked with the village for the last 20 or 30 years, built a lot of houses in the village. That's the point. We understand the Parish Council has always supported our application over the last 18 plus years, and although the village is now surrounded by these travelling developers making applications for vast numbers of houses, we cannot see why the Parish Council should now drop its support for our scheme. We have looked back as far as we can and believe that when we gave the existing playing field to the village, it was not within the red line of our platform application. You trusted us then, and you should trust us now. The extra land is available, as you are aware, and as mentioned in our application document. And number 4, not supporting our application would just throw us into the pack with the travelling developers. And that is from the developers. And that's it, Chair.
Thank you very much. We'll officer traffic developers. Right, over to council. First. Please.
I accept that the surface drainage is being dealt with, and as the last rep suggested, they are trustworthy people, and quite happy to accept their word. Sewage, I think, might be a slightly different issue. It actually says in the DNA statement that Hand and Water have said that they are at full capacity at the moment, but they are obliged to deal with it. At the moment, when the sewage is under stress, dealing with it in many water zones is to have a tanker outside the pumping station 24 hours a day. It fills up, drives away, comes back again, and that goes on. It's caused the food people to move along near to where I live on Ashfield Road because of the noise overnight. So I can imagine that, or my fear is that by coping and will just have more tankers more often.
So, what you're saying, discharging their statutory obligation is a tanker sitting outside.
That, yes, yes, more often. I mean, at the moment, it's only in times of heavy rain, particularly heavy rain. But I can see that getting more and more frequent.
Chairman, if I could refer you to the wording in the planning statement. A pre-planning assessment was submitted to Agri-Water, who indicated that there is no capacity. However, Agri-Water has an obligation to provide a suitable solution for the discharge of foul water, and it is in the process of undertaking modelling work to determine this. And I imagine that that will have to be completed for the satisfaction, certainly of the chief planning officer before that would be allowed to do, but it is a very valid point.
Yeah, so it will be much more than an emergency tank or other things to what's being said. And again, that will be taken up. Thank you. And, thank you.
Well, well, no one like houses in the village, none of us want houses in the village, but it's inevitable that we're going to get some. And I think this site offer us something. We're going to get houses whether we want them or not, and there's nothing we're going to do about that. I don't want them, I'm stuck me in there, I've got stuck in the back of mine, I've got them coming up front, everything. But it's going to happen. This site offered the village something, which some of the other sites don't. They offer us land for a school, and if you come by our school now without them, and see all the cars parked on them roads, it's horrendous. They park for an hour a day in morning and night. They park on the junction at Cook School, Cook Through Junction, Armstrong's Corner. They park in dead west of Cliffs, all up to past the old police station, all around the old school. There isn't room in that school. They haven't got a car park, they haven't got nothing. The school won't cope, full stop. No matter what they say, it won't cope. It's just waiting for somebody to get killed. The other thing is, Blackburn will be overloaded. We need more playing field. It's, as the village has grown, we'll need tennis courts or perhaps other things, loads of other things we'll need. We won't care. The school will be handy. They can use all our site. They can use all our facilities. And I don't think we'll get a doctor's surgery, but the school, I think, is just as important. I supported this in 1997 when I was on the parish council, and I'm going to support it now. I think it's something that the village has got a chance of getting something. The other sites, there's one other site we have a chance of getting something. But the other majority of houses, bacon factory and all the others like all that, we've got nothing. This, we've got potential to get something, and I shall support it.
Thanks for that, Dick. Thanks for the sum. Yeah, it certainly would appear to be lesser all evils. And obviously, like it says, they're really concerned. The only thing, of course, that's not addressed is the traffic congestion.
Well, there's going to be traffic congestion, whether that's there or not.
Absolutely, absolutely.
We're talking about these, or for want of a better word, sweeteners. They are, in addition to the civil payments and all the other regulatory, I take it, then the amount of what you have, etc., are all affected by that, aren't they?
That appears to be the influence.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing goes on.
Well, exactly, yes. It's
And I think that the statement that was made by that British Commission in terms of, yeah, we need to trust us, that needs to be considered. Thank you.
Can I ask the committee
So
to
sorry.
the microphones?
Whoa, nothing.
You're struggling there.
You're struggling? Okay. I think you're all here, just, we need to just talk into them a little bit closer. Sorry about that.
That's better.
Is that better? Yeah, good.
Definitely, yes.
We almost have to eat it. David,
Mr. Chairman,
can you take
Yeah.
it?
Mr. Chairman, I agree with much of what Dick has said, but I do really think that we should try to have some sort of delay on all these plans until we have got a proper traffic survey done and some coordinated action as to regarding the traffic in the village, i.e. principally the question of the relief road. And I would like to think that we can persuade this developer and other developers to make a substantial contribution towards the cost of a relief road to alleviate the problems of traffic at this level crossing. I do think this is very remiss of the rather flippant way that the planning statement here deals with the question of the traffic of the railway crossing. It is a problem, and to say that building these extra houses is not going to aggravate the situation is really quite wrong. It's laughable, really. It's anybody who frequently goes over the railway crossing, some of the statistics that have been prepared by various developers, I'm not criticising this one in particular. I really don't wonder when they do the surveys because they say the gates go up and down in 120 seconds. You know, I mean, until we get a proper survey, I don't think any of these big plans that we've been put in front of us should be put in place until a proper highway survey has been done and a traffic survey, and that the highways people are made to realise how seriously traffic congestion is getting in the village. I have no objection to this plan on any other ground really, apart from the traffic issues. We are having to have these as to the village. They're not really sprung on us. I mean, there are some people who simply think these have come out of thin air, but Elmsall has been scheduled to be a village for development for, to my certain knowledge, the last 50 years. I remember when I was quite young, printed a survey for what was then the West Suffolk County Council, when it was just half of Suffolk. And that goes back to the early 60s, and they were talking about Elmsall as a principal centre then. And of course, anybody moving in the village should be aware of the fact that it is going to develop. It's one of those things we have to learn to live with. But I do think that they should get hold on all these developments until such time as a
everything said. And we have an agenda item to deal exactly with that, the intended traffic survey that the parish council is intending to undertake.
Can I come back? Yeah, I fully endorse what David said. And I also think that we need to persuade the panels to allow us to consider all these things in conjunction with one another, because deciding them individually doesn't take into account the fact that the cumulative effect will be greater than the sum of the parts, as it were. When you consider one in isolation, that's fine as far as it goes, but it doesn't reflect reality, because as they're built, there'll be others being built. And I also think we need plans to look together at the ban on heavy lorries on the 1088, because that's adding to our roads as well. Unnecessary heavy lorries coming through our village, instead of steaming as it could straight through north with a perfectly viable road for that purpose. And I think if all these things go on at the same time, that would be greatly to our benefit and be a lot fairer and make the process far more meaningful.
Absolutely. And as Peter alluded to earlier, how the planning procedure is that each application is looked at separately. We endeavour to get a meeting with the strategic director of planning, I think his title is, but Sarah will probably correct me on that. And I think the key is in strategic to have a meeting to discuss and find a way of how the cumulative effects can be considered. And I think that again is almost as key as the traffic survey that we're trying to take. Julia?
I agree with what was just said. It says on here about. I'm disagreeing with what Peter's just said.
Julia, so you put it right at the top. Just pull it further forward.
There's two questions. One of them is why has it not been built for? Why, what stopped this development for? Anybody know?
The developers have never brought it forward as a formal application for reasons best known to themselves.
Okay.
And also something on here about there is room for expansion of 105 places at the house. Where? Anybody know?
No.
That means at least 4 categories, which is.
I think probably again some of the facts that are in the strategic document need to be challenged. Yes, the traffic statement, yes, it's the sewage, so.
Where is this from?
What happened?
Mr. Chairman,
So you need to tell me what you said.
Mr. Chairman, I haven't walked past the primary school if they put another 4 classrooms on there that children will have absolutely nowhere to play. I mean, there's a precious little space on that side for the children to do anything outside already. We get another 105 children there, it would be quite ridiculous.
So again, we need to challenge it. It's a technical point. If we postpone any decision as Mid-Suffolk District Council postpone their decision on boarding present, subject to further information from traffic.
You can postpone making any comment, but what it means is if Mid-Suffolk decide to meet and you haven't made comment, they won't take any notice of it. So no, you don't have the power that they
We don't have the power of deferment or grace period or okay. Lisa.
Thank you. So we can go for the delaying option, but if we have to pass a comment, then I think we ought to support this on those grounds alone.
Any other comments? What I would suggest then is that we put it to a vote in terms of supporting or not supporting, but most importantly, whatever we decide to do, I think the company comments are absolutely essential in terms of all being raised this evening. Okay, so let's, I'm going to ask for people, councillors that would support the proposal with serious comments and subject to. So, for
Mr. Chairman, do we have a chance for any public comment?
you do, there's, right, yeah, further
After
down.
you've made the decision.
You do have a chance, of course, but that's where we're elected to make that decision on your behalf, but you do have a chance to make a comment further on the agenda. And please bear in mind, this is the strength of the comments that we will accompany with our recommendations. We okay to move on, Peter?
Yes, Chair.
Okay. Agenda number 6, I'd like to propose that the Huntsville Parish Council maintains professional lead, growth and sustainable planning and the District Council its views on the planning application on this agenda. Could I have somebody to second that, please? Anyone? So, I'd like to take that again, so vote on that. 4. Move on to number 7, and again, obviously things are very important, I think, to discuss the funding of an appropriate traffic survey towards or otherwise validity of the statistics presented with all of the various plan applications that we've seen recently. We're absolutely committed, subject to the vote, to have a professional survey carried out. So we have true data. We understand that some of the existing traffic surveys that have been done, the way traffic survey modelling, no expert unless there's any in the room, but I do have a lot of experience of computer modelling. The massive variation is in the input, and also some of the data, the age of that data, the linear extrapolation of that data, going into models. I think to me, pretty unsafe. So we believe it's absolutely essential to get a professional, unbiased survey to give us the true facts of the traffic situation and how it could be affected by future proposals. We are also trying to get funding for that from what's the funding from?
We asked Councillor Mrs. Sewell if she can give us funding from her highways locality budget.
And we're still waiting on that, but again, I think regardless of that, we've just got to buy the money and undertake the survey with absolute evidence. So I'd just like to put that to the rest of the councillors in terms of views. Right.
Do we have any estimated costs for doing such a survey? I see councillors don't provide paper in it, I'm just wondering what sort of cost it is for that.
These aren't we need to go out and get proposals on the table quickly, make a decision. So this point really is for approval of the council to seek these proposals and act on the point.
Can I ask that we get a substantial proposal for the next council meeting's agenda to deal with this then, rather than pushing for about waiting 5 or 6 weeks, so I just wanted to start it and get it done.
We're trying to get it, let's say, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. 2 to 3 weeks, we'll get it, you're going this one,
Yes, I'm just, Councillor Friend is suggesting that we can't deal with it this meeting.
Well, no, sorry, I haven't read the paper properly, so.
I didn't think so. Yeah.
I think I can pass the sufficient information on the agenda for there to be a formal person.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to make a point. I do think that we just make sure we have this survey done very properly and correctly and actually in full. I don't think there would be any problem with public support for having that job done properly. So at least we have some accurate information. So we at least would appear on worry about our beginning, but at least we should have done the job and hopefully get a result which will be listened to by the powers above us. Because we never forget that our powers are purely advisory. We have no statutory powers to override any decisions made by the more powerful councils. We can only feed them accurate information.
Absolutely. But I think getting the survey done by the correct professionals with the correct accreditation will have a lot of weight, even with somebody.
May I propose that we go ahead with this survey with all due speed and hopefully we'll get the results we hope for.
Thank you. So I'll second that. Okay. Can we take a vote for one? Thank you.
Can I just quickly say this was actually Julie's original idea, I don't know. Yeah. Sorry, David.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Julie, but we are saying okay, we move on to number 8, any other business for information. Sorry. Number 8, any other business for information to be noted or for inclusion on a future agenda. Peter?
Chairman, yes, today, only a couple of hours ago, we finally had word from the government-funded technical support group who are beginning tomorrow to do a professional viability study on the relief road. And I suggested to them that this needed to be done very quickly, and they are going to turn it around within 2 weeks. So what they will do is they will look at the plans that we had drawn up 8 or 9 years ago now by Jackson's. They will look at those, it will be a desktop study, they will reassess them, and they will come back with a viability measuring the cost and the practicalities against the income that will be required from development. And that they say, he told me today, they will turn around in 2 weeks. He's going to confirm by email tomorrow.
Excellent. Thank you.
Fred, can I just ask, does that mean there would then be a project in which donations could be made towards anything further? Does it take us that far?
I don't think it takes us that far. No, I think that's another subject that we're still to have discussions on in terms of pots or a vehicle to be able to collect any funds that developers are proposed to look for. But that's another piece of the jigsaw that we're still working on. Okay, so if we move on to 9, public comment invited on future matter developments of council business. Further matters, sorry, further matters. Looks as though Ross will bear himself.
There we go.
everybody hear me? All right, well, good evening, Council. Well, I don't know about you guys and girls, but I'm disappointed with that. I appreciate the infrastructure is not our strongest suit. I.e., we haven't got enough schools, we haven't got enough sewerage, we haven't got enough this, that and the other. But one of the biggest things that we've made in our previous applications is lack of transport. I'm sorry, I think you've just ignored previous rejections for application, and that was transport. Do we need new schools? Yeah, I have to send mine out of the village, my kids out of the village. That's absolutely irrelevant if you can't get your kids there safely. The crossing point is going to be absolute murder. Absolute murder if we put this one in. So, I don't know about you guys, but for once, I'm actually disappointed in the decision you've made. I respect your opinions, I don't agree with them. And to say that you can't have a fight against these things is wrong. Okay? So in here, next Monday, 7:30, what we're going to do is our own ginger group meeting to see what we can do about all of the applications that we put forward, not just this one in isolation. I applaud what you're doing about the traffic survey, and I think as soon as possible, the better. You know my views on that. I haven't really got a question for you guys, I just wanted to give you my opinion. I'm disappointed. Thanks, guys.
Sorry, yeah,
Emergency space, I remember speaking to you at a meeting, and there was a vacancy at the time of the Parish Council, and I say to you, if you've got someone to use, why don't you come to it?
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. Everyone's got it? That's why I've been coming to the meetings, to take an interest in what we do. Is it right for me to join the council? No, I haven't got enough time to do it. Is it right for me to try and help you defend our village? And I do think we're going to get houses, but let's just limit them and have an associated argument across the whole spectrum, not just individual applications. So, would I join the council at some time in my life? Probably, if I've been voted in, of course. It's assuming or not, but, you know, I applaud what you do. I think you've got a lot of time and effort to things, and I haven't got the time to dedicate to that. But I do have the time to dedicate to try and fight for the village, and that's what I'm trying to do here.
just one response is, we are fighting for the village.
I'm not
There is
saying-
no way that we are not fighting, and hopefully we're not going. Perhaps the more strategic approach that we're taking in trying to get the best possible deal for the village.
I accept that, Fred, but if you accept one and ignore the reasons for previous rejections, you weaken the argument for previous rejections, especially when you go to Mid-Suffolk District Council.
Disagree.
Well, we're going to beg to disagree.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
I think when I just switched off, actually, they're all left it on.
Yes, no?
Yes, that's it.
No.
It's
It's all right, that's right. I'm just hearing the comments made by the developer or the letter, and it sounds like a threat to the council, to be quite honest. A threat to say that if you didn't allow permission for that piece of land, he wouldn't give you the land for the school. But who's to say that you're going to have that school? Who's going to ask Suffolk County Council going to give you build the school there? So I'm looking at it in a different light. I'm sure a lot of other people are looking at it in a different light.
They're questions we obviously can't speak, so.
Yeah, but you've obviously voted now. You've given your vote to say, yes, we'll have houses there for the developer.
With substantial comments that will be qualified.
But you said yourself, they'll take your comments. That will be underwritten, won't it?
Well, I don't think so, and I hope not, but along with the rest of the lobbying that we are doing, there is.
I mean, I realise this village has got to have houses. I really feel that we're being savaged at the moment. This village is being savaged by Mid-Suffolk, or by the developers.
I think along with all villages, and as I was saying, you know, we are doing our most, perhaps, in a more strategic and logical way to protect the village and to get the best possible result we can for the village.
we're going to have houses, and Paul certainly, like what he said, we may not get a school. So county council makes it, we can't.
Sorry, can you speak quiet? Excuse me, can you be quiet? There's a meeting going on here. If you want to talk, can you please go outside?
At least we're putting forward a proposal which has got some chance. I'm afraid if we go on, the village will finish up with all houses and the village won't get nothing. I've been in this village for all my life, 79 years we are now, and I've fought and fought for everything like all we've got now, and I still say we've got to try and get everything we can. We could finish up with nothing and a load of houses.
Can I just add, Mr. Chairman, that, as I said during the discussion, if the school, should we have one, and it looks to me as if we need one, we're going to need one, where else can it go? I feel was closing this one down would leave us with no options to build a school. The school would be probably halfway to Thurston or heaven knows where. I just can't see another option. Please.
Yes, I'm the person that's been complaining about the stormwater drainage for the site on Ashfield Road, and there is a problem there with surface water drainage. Oak Lane is flooded quite often. It goes through that site. Ashfield Road also drains into that site. They have made no provision initially to deal with that. They're now proposing to retain the ditch that runs alongside Ashfield Road. They're not willing to say who is going to retain the ownership of that ditch. And the person who owns the ditch is the person that needs to be responsible for keeping it clear. They're also going to put on their latest plan a very vague diversion to the south of the site, to the pond that goes to White House Farm. It actually, at the moment, it goes across the middle of the site to the back of that pond. They're also showing that their own surface water drainage is coming out of that pond. I think you might find you'll get pressure coming down to your own playing fields. There's too much water goes into that particular pond. But I'm hopeful, I've worked with the developer on it, that they will come up with a solution. I think it's very important that Oak Lane in particular should not be flooded. It's particularly important to me, as my house is lower than the road, and when it floods, I have a Victorian house that sits in the water, and that doesn't let the water through. So I don't really want to have any additional flooding. There is another problem, if you look at the plan. They have a problem with the visibility story from the new exit. And the problem with that is that to the south of the site, if they retain the hedge, then they won't have a very good visibility display. If they remove the hedge with the row of terrace houses facing the road as they've got at the moment, then you're going to get exactly what you've got at Blacksmith's Way, with everybody parking outside the front of the house instead of the back, and that's on a blind bend. There's been 4 accidents on that bend in the past 2 years. Just 2 weeks ago, a lorry through the hedge. We've had a car into the pond. We've had another car through the hedge, and we've had another car on the other side of the road written off. So it's not exactly a safe place as it stands. If you have a spool on the same entrance, you're going to have a lot of traffic at peak times, and you're going to have traffic coming out of the housing and traffic going into the housing at the same time. So are you proposing to use the entrance to White House Farm further down to the school, or are you going to use the entrance that they have on the plan, which is not linked in any way to the school? The only thing I would say I'm surprised at is the attitude of people towards what can only be described as a bribe. So it seems, I thought the council would look at the plan size of the drive. So if somebody else came along with a bigger site and said, we won't just give you a bit of land, we'll build the school as well, you can have it. Would that be a better one to support because you've got a bigger drive? Or if somebody said, well, we'll give you a school and we'll build a doctor's surgery and put it with doctors, but we want 2,000 houses, would that be a better site to support because of the size of the drive? I would have thought that the decision should be made on the suitability of the site, whether it's going to cause problems with sewage, whether it's going to cause problems with flooding, whether it's going to cause problems with traffic, not on the size of the amount of money that's going to be on them in one form or another to make it a little bit better. I mean, anybody can offer anything if they have a big enough site, can't they? Pretty much. So is it the policy of this council that the person that offers the most gets the best consideration?
Of course not.
But that's what you've just done, isn't it?
Well,
That is what you've just done. The one that's offered the most has got the best consideration.
it's the one that we believe is going to be the best ultimate package, not just any particular part.
But that's the
of
best,
village.
it's the best package, isn't it?
Well, it's not, nothing is singular, is it? It's got to be an accumulation of all of the facts that make up a decision. That's the decision.
So as I said, if somebody offered a bigger site, offered to build the school, would you then change your mind?
Hypothetical. That's very hypothetical. I think we just go around in circles. Thank you.
What I'm trying to point out is the principle of the situation. The principle I'm pointing out is surely the site should be judged on the suitability of the site. I'm not actually against this site, though I might sound that I am. I don't think it's a bad site. I think people need houses to live in. I think I would be happier if there was more affordable housing and less interest in other things. But I'm just trying to make the point that possibly it should be judged on what people offer in the way of third-party offers, albeit for the good of the village, because then you just end up in a bargaining situation. Somebody else will come along and say, well, we're going to 2,000 houses, but we're going to give you a school and we'll build it. But if a doctor's surgery, we'll pay for that.
Can we respond?
The alternative is to do nothing, and then you're going to get anywhere. And as far as the houses on the road, this is just it's just the actual plan in the group, not how the house is going to be. So that when I came to the public meeting at one of the things I brought up about not parking, field parking roads, because I can see that happening as well. So that is something for the future you've got to be decided.
Well, in point of fact, actually, then the ditch looks like it's going to be going across the front of those houses, so that's quite realistic.
No, that's the only thing I said is certain is quite necessarily wrong is actually that little plot on the road where the houses are very thin as far as affordable two-bedroom is decided.
So on the affordable, going to be the 20% off market value.
I think we need to form in this one because we're getting into a long drawn out discussion with no end to